The Buffalo Bills and Baltimore Ravens are set to face off in the divisional round of the playoffs. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen will be able to sort out who actually deserves the MVP and who is an empty stat merchant. This is going to be one of the best playoff games we have seen in a long time. Throughout the records, throughout the regular season result, this one is going to be great. It's going to be competitive. To get to the prediction though, we got to look back and see how these two wildcard games went. Starting off with the Ravens, they took care of business against the Steelers. At one point, it got to be a one-touchdown game, but it never really felt that close. Baltimore came out of the gate red hot. They ran over the Steelers defense with King Henry, with Lamar Jackson. The Steelers really couldn't do anything. The offense looked apathetic up until they started hitting some deep shots to George Pickens in the second half, but Baltimore was in control of that game from start to finish. A dominant win, a win which makes you question, should Mike Tomlin continue to be employed by the Steelers? But it's a topic for a different video. You've got to be pleased with what you saw as a Ravens fan.
Yeah, the only people who thought the Steelers really had a chance in this one were the way too optimistic Steelers fans who were drinking the Mike Tomlin and Russell Wilson Kool-Aid, who thought the defense would maybe be able to get to some semblance of their dominance that they had early in the season, and Russ would maybe have a few deep balls to keep the game a little close.
I gotta be honest with you, man, after the 4-game losing streak going into the playoffs, I think you're talking about 4 people.
That's my point. There's not a lot of people, so the result is not shocking. The fact the Ravens dominated, not shocking.
And I think you're talking about Savannah. You're talking about Russell Wilson's wife and future son. That might be it. I think Mike Tomlin's wife knew he was kind of cooked in this one.
Quite possible.
Took the Steelers merchandise out of her clothing boutique.
And we've said this every single time the Ravens have a dominant performance like this. I don't know, this version of the Ravens can be beat. I mean, you have Lamar Jackson averaging over 5 yards a carry. You have Derrick Henry averaging over 7 yards a carry. Lamar Jackson is completing over 76% of his passes, and he did not even have his number one wide receiver on the field. So incredibly impressive performance from the Ravens. I think what makes their offense so dangerous is that they have the ability to run the ball better than any other team in the NFL. And off of that, they also have one of the best passing attacks in the NFL with having 2 great tight ends with a healthy Zay Flowers. They have a very good wide receiver 1, and I like Rashad Bateman more than other people do. He certainly had the best year of his career this season.
A low bar.
And then on the defensive side of the ball, since a couple rough games...
It was more than a couple. Since the entire first 12 games of the season, their defense is now actually shown up and is playing like the all-pro studded unit we have expected all year. Kyle Hamilton has stepped up. Roquan Smith has stepped up. You cannot run on that defensive line. They've got great run fits. They shed blocks at an incredibly high level. The pass rush still leaves something to be desired, but the way their secondary is playing, particularly Hamilton and Humphrey, you cannot get much. Nate Wiggins has really come on late in the year as a rookie. If he had played this way from the start, he would probably be the defensive rookie of the year. It's a great unit now.
Yeah, their defense has not given up more than 20 points since that loss to the Eagles when Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals and an extra point.
What does that have to do with their defense?
Well, if you have an offense,
Tucker performance.
if you have an offense putting up more production, then we know how offense and defense play off of each other.
I think you're still just salty Tucker kicked him out of that game. Justin Tucker's performing well, by the way. Has not missed a field goal in, 3 weeks?
It has to do with the defense. It's giving the offense some momentum.
I think you just stop posting on social media. Again, once the kickers start talking to the public, they get mentally screwy. He has probably done the Aaron Rodgers ayahuasca in that isolation chamber thing. He is only seeing the football. Enough about Baltimore. Looking at the Bills, you can point to some flaws in this Bills performance here. A competitive game of that. The Broncos defense really showed up. The Bills were ineffective in the red zone for long stretches of this game, but then you look back at the final score, and it's 31-10. James Cook absolutely dominated. Josh Allen stuffed the stat sheet. They looked like the best team in football in the second half. If that version of the Bills shows up, they're pretty damn hard to beat too. Their defense played a great game. A lot of that was aided by the windshield. Bo Nix not really being ready for that and his broken back, but I digress. Josh Allen, once again, the most valuable player to any team in the NFL. A pretty big carry job, even with the help of Cook. Matt Milano being in this game will help the Bills a lot more in this Ravens matchup. Big factor against the Broncos. It's the same thing we said about the Bills all year. They are a great one-man show, and if that show has its elephants, has its clown car, has its girls jumping through flaming hoops around the ringmaster that is Josh Allen, they're going to win games.
I want to talk about the good we saw from the Bills first, and I think the most impressive thing about this Bills offense is just the number of weapons they are able to get the ball out to. I think 8 different players caught a pass, 6 different players had 2 or more catches. Amari Cooper, who they traded for mid-season, you thought maybe he'd become a centerpiece of that offense. You have Curtis Samuel, who made a big play. Khalil Shakir made a bunch of plays. Dalton Kincaid. Ty Johnson had the biggest play of the game from a receiving perspective that really broke it open there from Josh Allen, which was an incredible throw. So the fact they have all of those different players that they are able to get the ball out to, I think it makes their offense incredibly difficult to cover, that there's so many different guys they trust. The number of quality weapons they have the ability to get the ball out to. I mean, we've seen Keon Coleman make very big plays this season. We've seen Amari Cooper make a big play. We've seen Khalil Shakir have his moments. Ty Johnson now, the play that broke open the entire game. So I think that is the most difficult thing to guard about this Bills offense, where you maybe have some concern for this Bills team, is that they do have stretches, like you mentioned, where they just falter and their offense doesn't really seem to be working. Happened in this one early in the game where they're not putting the ball in the end zone when they're getting to the red zone. Against the Texans early in the year, they had a horrible game. When they played the Ravens early in the year, they had a horrible game. So there's moments where this Bills team looks mortal and their offense does not look that high level. And I think that's where it gives you a little bit of pause, but they have the ability to put up 40 points on you at any time, so they also have the ability to beat absolutely anybody.
Yeah, outside of a Bo Nix scramble looking at the defensive side of the ball, they absolutely locked down the Broncos' rushing attack. Granted, you cannot get further apart than the Broncos' running game and the Ravens' running game. I think I'm going to use that to transition to the actual prediction for the game here. But the defense played very well. All in all, a good win for the Bills despite the cold stretches. Now, looking at the matchup, it's going to be in Buffalo. The weather will be a factor. It's hard to say who that's going to favor. The cold weather generally adds some benefit to the running game, but the Bills are also a lot more used to these rough conditions than the Ravens, so I kind of think it's a non-factor to a certain extent. The Bills, in my opinion, have the better quarterback, have the deeper wide receiver room, and if Zay Flowers isn't on the field, they probably have the better wide receiver one. The Ravens, much better rushing attack. The offensive line, I'd probably take the interior of the Ravens offensive line compared to the Bills, who have better tackle play. I think it's a pretty even offensive matchup. Defensively, if you get the Ravens defense, which showed up the first 12 weeks of the year, the Bills are going to absolutely fry them. The one good game that Ravens defense played was against Buffalo when they were down 2 wide receivers and they got up to a big lead early, so it just became a one-dimensional passing attack. If that defense shows up, the first half of the year defense, they're going to get cooked. If the second half of the season defense shows up, they're going to play at a really high level and keep the Bills under 25. For the Ravens fans have got to be tired of hearing people say this. It's going to come down to if Lamar is a good game or not. They cannot survive a Lamar Jackson playoff stinker. And he's 3-6 in the playoffs. Yeah, he just won a big game. He played great. He's never won 2 playoff games in a row. He's never strung multiple good playoff performances together. And in these big games against these great teams, he has historically faltered. If he doesn't falter, if regular season Lamar shows up, if even a slightly diminished version of that Lamar shows up, the Ravens offense will win this game. Will score a ton of points on this Bills defense, and Josh Allen and company will not be able to keep up. But 2 interceptions, 1 interception, a fumble, lack of production on the ground, if that comes from Lamar, they're going to lose this game. It's all about Lamar.
I have a lot of faith in the Ravens, and it does not have much to do with the fact that they blew the Bills out earlier in the season. I think we've seen this Ravens team really establish their identity this year. In the first week of the season, when Derrick Henry was inserted into the offense, it looked rough, it looked clunky. Now it feels like they have that piece completely figured out. The way Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry play off of one another, the way Lamar Jackson works the passing game off of his ability to run the ball, and Derrick Henry's ability to run the ball is spectacular. The way they're calling plays, they play within themselves. They play with the talent they have on the field. I don't think they'll be pressing to throw the ball down the field and not play within their game plan and what they do best, like they did against the Chiefs in the playoffs last year. I don't think they'll be doing that. I think their defense, I think their offense, they've been building momentum as the season has progressed. I think they're peaking at absolutely the perfect time, and I'm more concerned with the Bills' few rough patches than I am with the Ravens, who got the Steelers monkey off their back at the end of the regular season, just took care of business against them in a big way again with maybe the best Lamar Jackson player performance we've seen in his career, and I think they have more momentum and talent than the Bills do right now.
In defense of Lamar playing well, I will say this. Against the Chiefs, I don't fully put that performance on him last year because the Ravens essentially abandoned the run and just had Lamar throw it a ton. That is never a good idea with Lamar. You can tell me all these advanced stats, this separation, leading the NFL and such and such. You would rather Lamar have a balanced attack backing him up and be able to use his legs instead of him dropping back and throwing 30 times. Even the most diehard of Lamar fans will admit that. I don't think they are going to abandon the run against the Bills. I just can't imagine that happening. I can't imagine Harbaugh letting them not give Derrick Henry his 20, 25, 30 carries. This is why you got him, so you could run the ball in these big games, these cold weather games in the playoffs. That is going to greatly help the Ravens. In terms of my prediction, though, I am going to pick the Buffalo Bills to win, simply because we need some controversy, we need some dynamics. I do believe Josh Allen is better in these big games than Lamar Jackson is. I think the Bills could quite easily jump out to an early lead, and while Henry will certainly still get his touches, we will see more of Lamar Jackson trying to throw to Rashad Bateman, to Isaiah Likely, to Mark Andrews, and if the refs are letting them play a little bit, if they're letting the linebackers hit and Milano is able to get his coverages right, I don't think that is going to be as effective as it was in the regular season. The way the Bills win this game is they get out to a big lead early, they turn it into a boat race, and in that setting, I think the Ravens falter in the playoffs.
That is where the Ravens can lose with the team. If Josh Allen lights up the defense immediately, jumps out to a 2-touchdown lead, I think things can get a little sketchy then. But just imagine how toxic the discourse is going to be surrounding these two quarterbacks and who is more valuable regardless of who wins this game.
Here's what I want regardless of who wins this game. I want whoever wins this game not to get the MVP. I want whoever wins this game to have a great performance, phenomenal. I want the loser to just stink it up, and then I want the loser to win the MVP. That is what I want to happen. That is my most desired outcome of this game. I don't care who wins as long as we all lose.
And then we might see whichever fan base of the losing MVP tearing down the NFL offices.
They are welcome to it.
That has been our reaction to the Ravens and Bills games. Who do you think's going to win between the two? Will Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen have the superior performance? Use code Thicc on Underdog, and we'll see you in the next one.